You're live.
All right. I think it says we're live on YouTube there. I didn't see any video though, so, but it does say we're live on YouTube. Maybe there's just a lag in getting us together, so. All right, I don't see any other people asking to get in the waiting room, so, or in the waiting room trying to get in, so I'm gonna minimize this for the moment. All right. I don't know, Ethan, you want to get going? Maybe I'll just at least start with the process for Zoom meetings.
Sure.
Sure. So due to the COVID pandemic and the executive orders and the everything coming down from the governor, we are holding these meetings on Zoom platform. We're also recording this and it's being shown live on the YouTube channel. We've encouraged people on the agenda when we post it to please provide comment ahead of time. If possible, and if they need to join in, they have that ability to join in. No one has requested that tonight. We also take comments on the YouTube channel. And so we'll try to monitor that the best we can as well. And that's the process. I do know due to the rules, we do have to do a roll call vote on everything. Ethan, you got to go through each member.
Okay.
And that's about it. On the process for these meetings. And today, there's a couple items on the agenda. But Ethan, you can start with public comments and non-agenda items. And maybe at some point here, we got to determine who's acting. We only have 4 members today, planning board members, right?
Correct.
So it appears both alternates will fill that role today. So go ahead.
Great. Thanks, Jeremy.
Yep.
All right. This is the March 4 Planning Board meeting for the Camden Planning Board. We'll first take any public comments on non-agenda items. I don't know if we have any.
I don't have any.
Any people out there? Okay, I do have one question for you, Jeremy. That's a non-agenda item that I would like to ask about. I noticed on the select board agenda for the 23rd, an item, non-owner occupied short-term rental registration ordinance.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to update the planning board on what's going on with that?
Sure. I know we had talked about this. This kind of came up in a discussion when we were talking about housing and looking at the village extension zone. This kind of came up in a discussion with you guys. The select board has it as a priority to try to address short-term rentals in some fashion, and they directed me to craft a registration ordinance or a licensing ordinance, if you will. It's not a zoning ordinance. It's not a land use ordinance. It's a registration ordinance similar to what, well, ordinances like this would be lodging licenses for bed and breakfasts and inns and the like. So they wanted me to do that. I know you guys wanted to address it or look at it from a zoning perspective. And I think if the board wants to pursue that, we can kind of do that in another fashion. But right now, the idea is to this amendment or this ordinance would require non-owner occupied short-term rentals. And those are rentals, dwelling units or parts of dwelling units or homes that would be rented for less than 30 days and no less than 7 days. So that's what it would do, and it would only apply to non-owner occupied. And the definition of non-owner occupied as it currently stands is the way we handled the accessory dwelling units last year. So it would not apply to somebody that lives in Camden, owns a house, it's their primary residence, and they want to leave for a month or so and then rent their house out, or, on a week at a time. That would not be regulated under this, and it's just a registration ordinance. And the only piece of it that there's one section that would require zoning compliance, and so the code office would need to ensure that what is being rented is actually a dwelling unit or a portion of a dwelling unit. And that's all that it would do, Ethan, at this point.
Okay, and does it, if someone has an accessory apartment or a separate unit on their property, does it apply to that?
If someone has an so I guess let me understand your question, or this is my understanding of your question. If I live on a home and have an accessory apartment on it, that accessory apartment under our new ordinance that was drafted, that was approved last year, requires that to be somebody's primary residence. As long as the dwelling unit or the other one is somebody's primary residence, then they would be able to rent. You always can rent them, right? It just would not be regulated under this ordinance because the owner is required to be their primary residence.
If they occupy either one or the other, but not both. Right. Okay. Yeah, I definitely think, the board has spoken up in the past about wanting to do something on short-term rentals as well. So I would like to get that moving forward, on a future agenda.
Sure.
At least we can start talking about what we might do.
Well, certainly addressing housing needs in town and doing things that we can to address housing. One of the aspects is short-term rentals and the impact on housing availability and affordability. So I certainly think it's worthy of having those discussions during workshops. And I'd suggest that we're going to have, I think, a lot of work ahead of us, looking at, kind of some of the things on our plate, and having this as part of a workshop discussion is certainly worthwhile, and we should do that.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel pretty strongly that the board wants to have some input, and I understand it's just a registration ordinance, and I get it, but it feels like something the planning board should have some input into overall, as far as what how we're handling short-term rentals.
I think honestly, this is like the first attempt to try to really understand what we have out there, and I think this is probably a good way to at least start that process.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing that. I guess we're moving then on to the public hearing on the amendment to the Town of Camden zoning ordinance. The proposal
Ethan?
is to, I should probably appoint some people to the board today, huh?
Yes, please.
Ethan, can I ask a question?
Sure.
It relates to what you were just discussing. I wanted to suggest to the entire planning board that they might consider attending the affordable housing webinar on the 30th of March, Tuesday, 30th of March, from 4 to 5:30 p.m. Vicky Dudera, Tia Anderson, and a number of other people whom I can list if you like, are presenting that. And I think that given that we are going to be discussing affordable housing in town, I think this would be very helpful and educational for all of us.
Okay, Anita,
Do you
thank
want
you.
more information on that, or should I send it around to the board?
I'm part of that discussion, so I can send that out to the board too.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate it.
That'd be great. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so we have two members of the board, Mark Siegenthaler and Chris, who are not here today, unable to attend. So we do need to appoint two alternates. I guess that's done by motion. Matt, you're my motion man today.
I'm going to.
I think you can just appoint them, Ethan.
Oh, is that right, Jean? Okay, thanks.
I think so.
Okay, well, given we have two alternates and two vacancies, do we need all five spots filled? I think we do. So I'm going to go ahead and appoint Andy Smith to replace Mark Siegenthaler, and Pat Chen to replace Chris O. And that will give us a board of 5. And then we can proceed to the rest of the meeting.
And Ethan, we can pretend there was a motion and that we all approved it. How about that?
Jeannie just said we didn't need to do that.
I'm with Jeannie all the way.
Don't argue with Jeannie. We know that.
Thanks, Ethan.
So the public hearing portion then is for an amendment to the Town of Camden zoning ordinance, amending Article 8, Section 5B, permitted uses, and Article 8, Section 5C, uses permitted as special exceptions. We're going to start out with a Jeremy explaining the ordinance amendment, and then we'll proceed from there. Jeremy, you have the floor.
Sure, thank you. As Ethan just described, there's a proposed zoning ordinance amendment that has been proposed by Chip Late. He owns property on Route 1. We've had multiple discussions on this before, so I think everyone is quite aware of what this does. And in order to accomplish what the applicant is seeking, both of these amendments need to move forward. And I'll just, again, detail what they are. And Article 8, 5B would amend the commercial uses in the CR by adding tradesman shops to the list of commercial uses that are allowed. It specifies that they're in existing commercial buildings. That is I guess I could share my screen for everyone out there in case people are watching this. Let me see if I can find it. This always happens to me, Matt. Do you think
I got your back? You want me to share?
Sure.
Hold on a second.
You think it would be right there like everything else is.
Hold on 1 second. Let's see what's going
Probably
on.
have too many open.
Let's see what I got for you.
You got it? All right, perfect. I just found it as well.
Okay. And do you want to share?
So you got it, Matt. You can keep sharing if you don't mind.
Okay.
And so the language that's currently in the ordinance here is in black font, and what we're proposed to add is the blue font, tradesman shops and existing commercial buildings. And then we would amend Article 8, Section 5C, uses that are special exceptions. We'd create a number 10, and that would be expansions of less than 10,000 square feet of new floor area attached to existing commercial buildings used for indoor storage, maintenance, and construction of boats and or by tradesmen, provided that the building, number 1, is in existence on January 1, 2003, 2 is on a lot of 5 acres or more, and 3 is located at least 125 feet from any residential lot boundary or public way. We've had lots of discussion about that, this over the last few weeks. That's what I have for you. And again, what the final motion should include a request for the select board to include this as one warrant article on the June warrant. And then from there, I guess I'm going to leave it. We might as well.
Jeremy, real quick.
Yes.
I know we've discussed this before, but after 3, instead of a comma, or at least there should still be a parens there.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
That keeps showing up. Yeah, right there.
Yep. Gotcha. Thank you, sir. All right. I guess we could probably stop sharing the screen, Matt, for now, if that's all right. And then I'll introduce Chip Late, and he is the one who's proposed this amendment. I guess I'm going to add Edith. I'm going to add someone to this meeting. I don't know who they are, but let's see. Edith. Oh, you knew that was? I'm going to do it. Doing it anyway. How's that, Matt? There we go. I know Edith. Perfect. She's over in Pleasant Ridge. All right. So I'm going to introduce Chip Late. And Chip, why don't you just say what you're proposing other than what I just said, or in addition?
Great. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, board. Yes, my name is Chip Late. I'm the current owner of the property at 216 Belfast Road. It's about 9 acres there. This is a property that was purchased by my grandfather back in 1952, and it added to it a couple of times. My father and I built one of the existing buildings on the site in the 1990s. Been used for maintenance of construction equipment historically, and more recently, we've used it for construction and maintenance of boats. I'd like to add a shed type building on the back of this building, and to do this, we would need this this amendment, and I would also want to include tradesman shop, which there's a big need for in this area. So that's basically it, and this is the process we need to go through. Part of these approvals, any application would have to go before the I believe the ZBA for a special exception, and then onto the planning board for site plan review. So anything that will be built there will have numerous opportunities for review. So figure this would be a way to move this project forward. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
All right, thanks, Chip. And I think this is your third appearance before this board on this one
So
amendment. But thank you for your time on that.
Yeah.
And so it's time. I think that's the end of your presentation, Jeremy.
Yeah, you should probably open a public hearing, right?
Yeah, I thought we did open the public hearing.
You
Okay.
need to read the procedure.
Oh,
It's like the third page in the supplemental packet.
Roger that. Okay, thank you, Jeannie. The Town of Camden Planning Board procedure for public hearing on proposed zoning ordinance amendments. The following procedures will be followed for the public hearing process. The Director of Planning and Codes will introduce the proposal. That's already been done. The board will then seek comments from members of the public who wish to speak, comment, or ask questions. Questions and comments received via email, mail, or on the YouTube chat board will be relayed to the board by the planner. Those wishing to comment must come identify themselves for the record by name and address, or their comments will not be accepted into the record. All comments and all questions must be directed through the chair. The chair may exclude irrelevant or unduly repetitious comments. When no one else wishes to comment, the first public comment period will be closed and members of the board will be given the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant and or the public. A second public comment will be open for the purpose of hearing new and relevant information only. The second public comment period will be closed, and if members have no further questions or comments, the public hearing will be closed. Once the hearing is closed, no further comments will be accepted for consideration. Then the board will begin deliberation. A board member may ask for clarification, but no new evidence may be entered into the record by way of testimony unless it was erroneously omitted. It is not appropriate for the public to interject during the actual decision-making process. And then 7, the board will then vote to send the proposed amendment forward to the select board or not. So that's the procedure, and it is time now to open the hearing to public comment. Is there any member of the public who wishes to comment on the proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance?
Ethan, just so you know, I have not received any comment from anybody on this. I'm monitoring the YouTube channel. Don't see any comments there. No one
Okay,
requesting to get into the meeting at this time. And notice did go out to all the butters.
great. Thanks, Jeremy.
At the town. Yep.
So hearing no public comments, I'm going to close the first public comment period and open the discussion to the board. Matt, do you have anything you want to chime in with?
Not at this time. I feel that we've covered this in previous meetings in terms of addressing issues, including a la carte zoning and such things. And I think we've kind of addressed those for the public and feel comfortable with the way this has been revised, Jeremy. So thank you for doing that. And feel comfortable with, again, both Section 5B and the changes to Section 5C.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Anita, did you have any comment?
Yes, I just, in rereading, I read and reread this, I'm looking at the number 10 under the first one, amend Article 8, Section 5B. Construction of boats in existing commercial buildings. And then the second one, as we know, is allowing for expansion. And I, at least for my brain, as a citizen type brain, I'm looking at the word existing commercial buildings that were in existence in 2003, and the addition that Chip plans to put on there is not existing yet. There seems to be it conflicts with what he plans to do, at least the way I read it, because the addition is not existing presently, and you're seeing that as an expansion of an existing building. But I just wanted to say that's it's a little confusing verbiage.
I do see what you're saying, Anita. I would point out, of course, that the expansion is handled under Section 5C.
Right.
Right.
I understand the expansion is handled there.
Okay,
But the
Jeremy,
expansion-
did you want to address this at all?
I mean, this is common language that's used when communities do these kinds of things. I mean, what is being allowed is an expansion of an existing building. I don't know how else to phrase it. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but he's allowed a 10,000, if this passes, he's allowed a 10,000 square expansion.
Right. I think Anita's point is to almost the language existing commercial in the first section, in subsection in Section 5B, that gets him in the door for the existing building. And then the expansion is handled under 10, but she's reading it as though existing commercial buildings wouldn't include the expanded portion, if you follow that logic.
Yeah.
I don't think it's problematic personally, but I just wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to respond.
Yeah. I don't think it's problematic at all.
Okay. Did you have anything else, Anita?
No, that was my concern about the confusion that could be had over that verbiage.
And Mr.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I would say, and let me just say that I think, the 5B section is saying that all those uses are allowed in those existing buildings, right? All those uses. He can't expand in those buildings. The only expansion, again, falls under C. So when if someone comes in down the road after this building goes in and Chip's got a new user that falls within the category of 5C, they're allowed into that existing building. I'm just trying to clarify how that reads and how that works, Anita.
Right. And Matt, you had something?
No, I was just going to note again that the expansion as a separate note is by special exception.
Correct. Right.
And by the fact that it's by special exception and that it's separated, Anita, again, I would hope that that would help clarify in terms of as people would see this in the future, as they're separated out. Does that help, Anita, or is that still not clear?
I understand that we understand what we mean. I'm just saying that going forward, looking at this, I'm saying that there's potentiality for confusion in people who don't understand what we understand. So
Right.
I'll leave it at that. You do what you want. I'm just pointing it out.
Well, and to your point, Anita, Mr. Chair, if I could speak.
Yep, sure.
Mark had certainly tried, we had sent, as you would call it, Anita, initial language, taking out expansion and putting it into a whole new category. But as that was vetted, Jeremy, and correct me if I'm mistaken, as that was vetted through legal, and this is a private citizen making this application, that would have confused the issue and or perhaps not even been in our purview in terms of changing that language.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm sure you know more than I do on this type of topic anyway. That's okay.
It's fine, Anita. I do take your point. I see your meaning. It's just, I do think when read together, they do make sense. There's so much in legal writing and ordinances that do not seem to make sense to to anybody who reads the English language. So I am sympathetic to that. Okay, so Andy, how about you? Do you have any comments on this one?
Oh, I just want to add that in section 5C, I thought the sentence read logically in that, you know, when it says provided that the building, right, was in existence, the building kind of ties back to the buildings in the first sentence. So it's referring to the existing commercial building. So I didn't see a conflict in that language.
Okay.
So yeah, I kind of agree with Matt that we've been through this quite thoroughly in 2 previous meetings, and yeah, I'm good with it.
Great. Thanks, Andy. And Pat, anything from you?
No, I would agree with that, what Andy was talking about, how I felt like it was referenced in the section 5B also for the expansion part.
Okay. So, and no one has any further questions. So I guess at that point, we can go ahead and open for the second round of public comment. I'm not sure that's even necessary since we had no first round, but I will go ahead and open for a second round of public comments. And this is only for new information, questions or concerns not addressed.
I do have public comment that I received. So,
Okay.
and this is from Peter Lindquist, 36 Chestnut Street in Camden. And he wanted me to let you know that he's in support of the 2 amendments that are before the planning board. So Peter Lindquist on Chestnut Street.
Okay, great. Thank you, Peter, for that. Any other comments, Jeremy, anywhere out there?
No, sir.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comments portion of the hearing, and no more public comments will be accepted. I'm going to assume, but I will ask again if any of the planning board members have any additional questions of the applicant or of Jeremy. Pat, no.
No,
Andy, no.
No,
Anita,
No,
no. And Matt.
No, sir.
Okay, and I have no further questions. Then we can go ahead and close the public hearing. If I can get a motion on that.
Certainly make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second,
seconded.
thank you. We have a motion to close the public hearing and a second. I'll go around and take the vote. Matt, all in favor, say aye. Matt?
Matt Siegel, aye.
Aye. Pat Chen?
aye.
Anita Brochus Scott?
aye.
And Andy Smith?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. So that's 5-0. The motion carries. And the public hearing is closed. Now we need to have, with Jeannie's guidance, a positive motion to send this amendment forward to the select board. Who's my motion person on this one?
That would be Mark Siegenthaler.
Who's conveniently not here.
And then we also had this other guy, Ethan Shaw, but we can certainly make a motion. But before, yeah, Jeremy, I see your hand up there.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the motion, again, it's a positive motion. Moving this to the select board for their consideration with recommendation that it be sent to voters in June as one warrant article.
Right. Hold on a second.
You'll find some helpful language from Jeannie in the process agenda.
Give me a second. Okay. I don't see the helpful language, but I will take a shot. Here we go.
I can make a motion if you like. I've got it in front of me.
All right, Andy, let's go.
I'd like to make a positive motion to send the amendment forward to the select board for their consideration with the recommendation that it be sent to the voters in June as one warrant article.
Very good. Do we get a second on that?
I would love Andy.
Second,
Great, thank you. We have a motion and a second. I'll take the vote again. Matt Siegel,
Matt Siegel, aye.
Pat Chen,
Aye.
Anita Brochus Scott,
Aye.
and Andy Smith.
Aye.
And myself, Ethan Shaw, aye. That motion carries 5-0. The amendment will be forwarded to the select board for their consideration, by the voters in June.
Point of
That
information.
concludes. What's that?
Point of information, the amendment is actually, Jeremy and Jeannie, as it is 2 amendments, do we need to modify that to specify that it's amendment in Article 8, Section 5B and amending Article 8, Section 5C?
So moved.
So moved. I like you. Can we
You have a second on
modify?
that? I mean, everyone understands what we're doing here. There's
Yeah.
2 amendments in one warrant article.
Okay, there we go. Done. As long as,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate all the work you guys have done for this. And I'm sure I'll be seeing you shortly.
Yeah, thanks, Chip, for everything. And
Thank you.
you get a little reprieve from the planning board, but I'm sure we'll see you back. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chip.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, the subdivision proposal. It's a 4th amendment to an approved plan in the Pleasant Ridge subdivision. The applicants are David and Karen, oh boy, Gianniscusa. I see you're on here. I'm sorry, I just butchered your last name.
John Siracusa.
John Siracusa, great, thank you. Matthew Flick and Edith and Heather Cohen. And I believe that attorney Jesse Reuter is here representing the applicants. Jesse, welcome.
Thank you.
And we need to cover first whether the applicant is qualified to be heard. The application is qualified to be heard because the amendment will not alter the character of the subdivision. So I think first we're going to have a presentation from Jesse. Is that right, Jeremy, or did you want to jump in first?
Maybe I can jump in really quick, and maybe I'll let Matt share the screen if he can.
Great.
And then Jesse, I'll just kind of explain what's happening here, and then you can go.
Great, thank you.
And I think this is mostly for some of the new members of the board. This happens from time to time, where subdivision was approved, years ago, goes through a process, and there's evaluation criteria that the planning board needs to do to review subdivisions. And in this instance, this was all done years past when the subdivision was originally approved. And there's these state criteria. We put them into our zoning or our subdivision ordinance, and the planning board reviews those. What's proposed today is, in essence, removing a lot from the subdivision by splitting that one lot into 2, and the abutters each get half the lot. And there it is. Matt's showing it there on the screen. And so it would be my suggestion that there are no changes to the approval criteria. This is nothing but lot line changes. The board has approved at least one of these in years past. Some of the board members probably remember that. I think maybe even 2. So this is very common. And this is just, again, a lot line adjustment, if you will. And Jesse, take it from there if you'd like.
Great, thank you very much, Jeremy. Really what it is there are 3 lots identified on the plan, the approved plan, as lots 70, 71, and 72. What that proposal shows is that lot 71, which is tax map 110-13, would be split in 2, and with the east portion of that lot becoming part of lot 72, which is owned by David and Karen. The left portion, or the west portion, which would then become part of the lot belonging to Edith and Heather. In terms of the implications that has on the subdivision criteria, if anything, this further supports what kind of what the considerations are that the board would be upon to approve. This will not implicate, insofar as this won't then become an improved lot. It certainly improves aesthetics. There's no stormwater, management issues. Certainly no increase in traffic, anything of that nature. What it does basically is it increases 2 lot sizes. It's a wooded lot. The Cohens and the John Syracuses just want additional buffer, and that's exactly what this would accomplish. There is a contract pending planning board approval for the sale of that lot, which would then permit the lot split and the increase in those lot sizes. And as Jeremy said, it would effectively eliminate lot 70.
Right.
Just
Thank you, Jesse.
for the board's information in the packet that was sent around earlier, there's Article 8 of the subdivision ordinance has the approval criteria consistent with state law, subdivision law. There's 20 of them. Everything ranges from pollution, water, municipal water supply, erosion, traffic, sewage, et cetera, down to conformity with local ordinances and plans. And it meets all that. And I think you guys need to make a determination whether or not there are any changes to those approval criteria. And as Jesse suggested, I would agree with what Jesse
Right.
with you.
Okay. I think the first order of business then, if I'm not mistaken, is to have a motion that finds that the application qualifies to be heard as an amendment, because the amendment will not alter the character of the subdivision.
And the approval criteria.
Right, I know, we're gonna go through that. So do we need a motion first to just find that it qualifies?
Sure.
So moved.
Great, I like this so moved business. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll go ahead and take a vote on that. Or is there any discussion? I'd certainly take Jesse's position that it's not going to alter the character of the subdivision myself. So unless anybody has anything to add to that, I think we can move this along. Hearing nothing, I'll go ahead and call for a vote on that. As to whether it qualifies to be heard as an amendment because it will not alter the character of the subdivision. Matt Siegel?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
And Andy?
Aye.
Great, and I am also going to vote aye, so that's a 5-0, and that motion carries. Now we need to actually look over the discussion criteria. Has everybody had an opportunity to look over the criteria in Article 8? There's about 20 of them, I think. Is that what you said, Jeremy?
Yep.
I think this is pretty clear cut.
Ethan, do you have the list that you might be able to post up there? I don't have it right here on my desktop for everybody.
I do not have it. Maybe Jeremy can put it up.
Just so we can-
I'm using my phone for Zoom, and I have it on my computer.
Yeah, give me a second.
Well, and then we can just go through it as we've done in the past, if that's okay with you all.
Hold on.
I'm sort of feeling like Matt. Just to give you my take on this is, I think we can sort of look this over and not go criteria by criteria. I think that's appropriate. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremy.
I was hoping to say the same. We've done in the past, Ethan. We've done that on some of these simpler.
Yeah, because here we're taking one lot and putting it to the two abutters. It's not like we're doing anything drastic and changing the size of other lots or adding in new lots and stuff. So I would like to, if we can, just look them over, and if we see any of those that we think are relevant, I'm happy to have a discussion on them, but I don't see how any of these things are affected.
See my screen?
Yeah, I do. Yep.
So
So there you go. You have pollution, sufficient water, municipal water supply, erosion, traffic, sewage disposal, municipal solid waste disposal, aesthetic, cultural, and natural values, financial and technical capacity, surface water, outstanding river segments, groundwater, floodplain areas, freshwater, wetlands, river or stream or brook, stormwater, spaghetti lots prohibited, lake phosphorus concentration, impacts on adjoining municipality, land subject to liquidation, harvesting, and conformity with local ordinances and plans. I don't see anything there that's negatively impacted. I think the aesthetics and everything and the, all this other stuff, you have basically taking out a buildable lot. You're going to enhance many of these. So I don't see any real issue here where we need to go through these individually. But if anybody has one that they want to raise or discuss, I'm happy to allow the board that opportunity. So I will go to first to Matt and ask if you have anything to add to this.
No, Mr. Chair, I was going to, in fact, recommend that we try and approve them if possible as a group
En masse.
en masse. indeed.
Okay. Okay. Also to Pat.
I agree.
Okay. Anita.
I have a couple of questions. May I ask those?
Okay. Sure.
Well, what I have in mind, or what is informing my questions, is our ongoing discussions about housing in general in Camden. And this, of course, will reduce housing opportunity or a lot or a home building opportunity by one lot. I don't really object to it, to doing this in concept. I think what I want to ask is, which may be moot, but is it possible when, let's say, two new owners come in on either side and they decide, let's subdivide. We didn't build on that center portion. Let's subdivide and sell it and make some money together on putting in a buildable lot. So my question is whether this decision could be reversible should the owners so decide.
Yeah, I think it could be. I think it would require
Another
a
amendment.
new amendment to the subdivision, and we could then address that as the board at the time, whether we felt like it was altering the subdivision plan. But yeah, I think it's given that it would fit within the lot size criteria. If the two owners could get together and future owners and decide they wanted to undo it, I think they could.
Okay. And I note quite a difference in sizes of lots within the subdivision. And I didn't see in the packet, subdivision rules such as you've mentioned. And I'm wondering whether if somebody wanted to come along and subdivide, what lot is that number? The address is 81, say, because that's a bigger lot, or some of the other lots that are bigger. Are those things doable by the same manner?
If they meet all of the requirements, yes. Yep.
I think, Anita, the one you're talking about was merged by the owner of both lots. So it used to be two.
Right.
So it would be the same thing. You abandon that amendment, I think is what you would do, or.
So it can be done, should they choose to.
And Anita, just earlier, there's precedent that we've addressed this with Concord, where we have divided up property in new ways. So it has come before the board recently to go either direction, either to merge or to separate.
Mm-hmm. As long as it meets the minimum criteria, is that? Okay. And just for my edification, can you tell me what a spaghetti lot is?
A spaghetti lot is one that's drawn with a either for a shoreline or a road frontage meeting a minimum criteria where it's required not to be landlocked. It will be drawn such that it has a very narrow amount of frontage on the road, say like 50 feet, and then goes back and then opens up into a larger lot. Just to satisfy a requirement that it has the minimum required road frontage or sometimes even shoreline frontage, I think. Is that right, Jeremy?
Yeah, and the state standard, and again, they're prohibited, and it's really about about shore frontage on river, stream, or brook, or great pond, or coastal wetland. Lots created within the subdivision have a lot depth to shore frontage ratio greater than 5:1. Those are prohibited.
I see. I'm hoping that at some point we can have a discussion. I have no idea where it would fit in, and it certainly would not fit in here, about the concept of lots behind another lot and a road frontage that is the width of a driveway. That's what I have next to my house for neighbors that live behind me. And I believe that subsequent to their doing that, the rules must have been changed. And I just wonder, Jeremy, if we could at some point discuss that as part of the options of opening some land up for housing within the town at some point.
Sure, Anita, we can talk about that. I will say that the town's pretty liberal when it comes to that allowance already. I think people don't really understand what's out there and allowed. So we can have that discussion at a separate time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Anita. And then Andy, did I check in with you yet?
Not yet, but I got no further questions and I agree with Matt's earlier comments.
Good. Okay. I think then that takes us to the end of the discussion period.
Ethan, you want to ask about any public comment? We do have public here. And
yeah, I was just about to ask about that, whether there was any members of the public who wish to comment on this proposal. We do have
Is
a few
that
people.
Matt Flick at 1603? Is that Matt?
I believe so. He's in New Hampshire, so I think that is him.
Yeah.
Unmuted him and he can chime in if he'd like. I believe he owns the lot.
It's being sold.
Correct.
Yep.
All right. No comment, it looks like.
Okay. So we do need another motion then. I can go ahead and make this one, I guess. I move that the board find that the amendment is approved because there is no impact on the approval criteria. Listed as 1 through 20, Jeremy? Are those
Yep.
numbers are, and so I'm looking for a second on that.
I will second. Anita?
Okay, we have a motion and a second, so I will go ahead and take the vote again of the board. Matt Siegel?
In favor, aye.
Aye. Anita?
Aye.
Aye. Andy?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
And myself also aye. So the motion carries unanimous 5-0. The amendment to the subdivision is approved. And thank you everyone for your time, and thank you, Jesse.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Take care.
Jesse, we'll
Thank
get the board to sign the plan, and then you'll have to record that.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeremy.
You bet.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you.
Take care. The next item on the agenda is a discussion for the board. Just an initial discussion on the comp plan revisions to address sea level rise and options for amending the comp plan. And this is something I guess that Jeremy is going to lead. So Jeremy, you now have the floor on that.
All right. We've discussed this a little bit. I'd like to try to put a little more meat on the bones on how we can try to move this forward. I'm going to need some help, I think, from the board to do some digging and do some help drafting this. I don't think I can do it all. I can certainly and will assist and make it a priority for myself. But I do want the board to try to take some ownership over this if they can, and use your abilities to try to see what's out there. I have documents from Damariscotta, Booth Bay, York, Saco, South Portland, and that we could use. Lauren Cafe, who was our intern last year. She's from Bowdoin. She did some great work. She's still doing some good work on sea level rise in Camden. It's kind of happening with the University of Maine and Bowdoin College. She's put together a story map that's really a really neat. I just went through it yesterday with her and Esperanza from the University of Maine Cooperative Extension, who's leading this with Bowdoin. And it's really great presentation that Lauren has done. And I asked her yesterday if she can present that to the board next meeting, because you really get a sense of what the projections are for sea level rise as it relates to Camden Harbor and coastal properties. And I'd like to kind of have that be a good kind of kickoff and informational session for you folks on why it's important to address sea level rise. And again, I think we need to look not just at sea level rise, but climate change. And, you know, we maybe have to look at impervious surface coverage maximums, those kinds of things to address stormwater and increase storm flows. And I think this is all part of that we need to do. And again, this is the initial discussion on it. We've talked about it before, but I'm looking for some folks to try to help me with it. I know Pat sent an email around that she's willing to do a little bit of research and digging on it. And I think it's really about kind of putting some information together and letting us all digest it and have an open process, so the public can hear what we're talking about. We can seek some comments from them as well as we move this along.
Yeah, and there's a lot going on all around. There's the watershed group that's talking about the Magunacook and other things, and then you've got the expansion of the outer harbor that's being discussed with Lyman Morse. So I do think it's important that we get as much information as we can, and I think as a board, I think you're absolutely right, Jeremy. Education is primary here, the primary consideration. I think we all know that it's something that needs to be addressed, but I'm not sure we know exactly what the actual real threats are and what the best way to handle it is. Just we know that it seems like it's insufficient what we have to date in the town plan, in the comp plan. So I certainly welcome anything that will bring in people to speak. So maybe we should focus on some of those other groups as well, where you have the outer harbor group. Maybe somebody could come and present what that involves. And then the watershed group, maybe Allison can come in or something and talk about that. And I'm really thrilled, Pat, that you're willing to jump in and do some research. And I'm wondering if anybody else on the board has time or inclination to look into some of these issues as well.
What I can do too, Ethan, Lauren did a lot of legwork on this last year, and what I can do is I'll send you links to a number of community, and everyone links to a number of communities' comp plans. I don't want to recreate the wheel on this.
Right.
Certainly the sea level rise implications in Camden is unique to Camden, and we've got some good data, and Lauren can share that with us. So what I'll do is I'll get some information to all of you, and then I'm kind of hoping you all dive into it as much as you can, and we kind of start sharing thoughts, on this issue, so that we can move this forward. These kinds of amendments need to get approved by town voters. So my plan would be to try to hope to have something to voters for November. And I think that's how long it's going to take to develop some good, good stuff and have community dialogue that we need and to really understand the issue and come up with a good plan. On top of this is floodplain issues is part of it. If you look at Booth Bay's stuff that I sent around, they really are looking at flooding issues and coastal flooding. And part of that is something we need to look at too. I do have a copy of the latest floodplain ordinance that the guidance, we have to have a model, we have to adopt a model ordinance, which applies for the most part statewide. And I do have a current one that shows that would have the finished floor elevation for any new builds 2 feet above, as opposed to 1 foot above the base flood elevation. So that's an ordinance that I can bring forward to you all, but there are some implications in the zoning ordinance that we need to address, like height issue. It also impacts people along, the river and along the lake, where flood, in the flood. DEP and the floodplain management program at the state are trying to address some inconsistencies with the desire and the need for communities and property owners to raise their buildings up out of the floodplain, but DEP shoreland zoning regulations on height oftentimes don't allow people to do that. So as I understand, I just heard the other day that DEP is finally starting to look at that issue with the state floodplain management program. So this is probably very timely, because I know things take some time in Augusta, but I think by November we could probably have a good good plan along with that to address our floodplain issues too.
Yeah, yeah, and we're in a unique position right now to, I mean, I know that everybody who's a member of this board has an interest and care for the future of Camden and the coast and everything, and you know, this is our opportunity to get in and get our hands dirty and get down to work on something that is, you know, can affect the future of the town for the next 50 to 100 years. So I think it's really important, and I'm certainly willing to go through and whatever you send us, Jeremy, get into it. And also, you know, like I said, I would love to invite as many people to come in and speak to us about their issues and their views on this as we can get, because right now we are in an education process. I know sea level rise and climate change is an issue. I do not know fully. I've read like the watershed school report and the state report. You know, that's what I have for a foundation. But you know, I do think it's really important that we start to look at this as holistically as possible. Even though I realize that we're not doing the comp plan right now, we're just amending it. I think it's really important. So I certainly encourage everybody to dig in as much as they can as well.
That's a great point. And I think what I'll do, Ethan, is I'll try to set up. Maybe we're going to have some on and off again here. We're going to have some applications that come in that need to be reviewed. But I think while we're just doing this, I'll try to at least next few meetings, each meeting have someone here to speak and do a presentation. I'll Lauren Cafe from Bowdoin, UMaine next time. I'll touch base with the new climate change person at Watershed School, if she'd like to do something. And I'll chat with Allison. And Pete Slavinsky, I mentioned his name before.
Yeah.
The Maine Geological Survey. He's got quite a presentation. So I'll try to get those 4 entities right off the bat.
That's a great start. Yeah.
In the meantime, we'll just keep formulating our thoughts and kind of keep some, you know, noodling this stuff.
Great. I see you, Mr. Siegel.
And to that point, hey, Ethan, Jeremy, you know, what would be very helpful, as I'm a newbie to this issue, the scope and scale of what we would be trying to achieve. You know, what is the end goal in terms of number of changes, the focus, where are we? Because I read the Booth Bay and I read the York, and they're comprehensive. I mean, you know, you have in Booth Bay, you know, you're talking about over 20 parameters which are addressed.
Yes.
So the question is, moving forward into a November situation, what's the reality? Are we trying to address 3 parameters that we would like to get on the ballot? Are we trying to address 5 parameters? And again, I think that would be helpful early on to focus. You know, is it a question of floodplain? You know, I think Ethan and I both put Lyman Morse to task saying, do you guys really want to build this thing at this height? I mean, we were perfectly clear with Drew saying, are you sure? You know, you guys are right. So again, you know, is that a primary issue? Is that something, again, without going into the weeds right now, I would really early on like to get a sense of the scope and scale and see if we can find what our targets are. You know, what 3 issues are we really going to address?
Sure. That's a great point. So from my perspective, I think that'll play out as we do a little more due diligence on this. But in the end, I think what we'll need in November, probably be a package of climate change, sea level rise amendments would be my guess. One would be, and we've discussed this before, that we're not going to amend each chapter because that's a ton of work to amend each chapter. What I would like to do is just create a chapter, and then we can figure out as we're going which chapters then need, you know, what chapters need to be identified in our new chapter, and what goals and recommendations are we going to identify in a new chapter. So we'll do that, and at the same time, like the floodplain ordinance, you know, really get into that one and adopt that at the same time. And if there's others that need to be amended, other ordinances or things we need to do, I think we kind of create a package of, you know, in essence, it's a climate change package that goes to voters to address the town's future. And that's how I see it.
And in keeping with that, so does that, again, because looking at Booth Bay, I mean, that package right now would be, you know, 35 to 40 pages type of work with over 20 parameters. Do you see that as being realistic for what we're trying to achieve for November?
I see it as realistic.
I do too. And, you know, part of, you know, taking Jeremy's point, we are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're looking at what other communities have done. We're going to rely on experts. We're going to rely on the studies. We're going to look at all this stuff. And then it's, you know, really up to the town, the voters of the town. Do they take this seriously? Is this an important issue? And I think that for most people it is. And we are right on the water. We've got half of our, you know, almost half, you know, not half of our businesses, but a significant portion of our businesses right there on the waterfront. And you know, this town is vitally connected to the water and the shore and everything that goes on in the inner harbor and everything else. So, I mean, this issue is it's coming at us right now. I mean, you've seen, I don't know if you saw this stuff for the watershed or the watershed group in the paper, but you know, pictures of the Knox Mill at the flooding levels that they saw over the last couple of years. I mean, it's right there. And, you know, Matt, you and I, like you said, we're trumpeting this to Lyman Morse. You know, claims about high tides and, you know, storm surge and everything else. We know what's happening. We've all seen it, and it's washing up and it's coming over. And, you know, we're still dealing with the effects of things that have not been stopped. And we haven't seen any real action, you know, nationally or globally to even slow or address climate change. So we have to be prepared to address what I'm considering like the worst case scenarios. And, you know, what we hear are these, you know, 5.6 inches of sea level rise or something like that. But that's like a best case scenario in my book, you know, if that's what we're looking at, because if things aren't done globally, we're looking at more. So we need to look at it, you know, in another way globally and look at it at the comp plan. And like Jeremy proposes, I think the idea of adding a chapter as opposed to trying to go into each and every chapter and add a segment on sea level rise is the way to go. And you're going to have to, you know, refer to that from each chapter, which it's a big chore, Matt.
Yep.
But it is something that's really important, and this is our opportunity to deal with it. We can't wait until 2027 for the next comp plan.
I do think a lot of the technical information, Matt, I think we have that's available out there already. So I think we'll be able to put the stuff together pretty quickly. I mean, but I think it's really about getting the community to talk about this issue.
I agree.
You live over in Belmont area, right? I mean, you live near that stream, Jacobs Avenue. I mean, that gets the amount of water that comes running through there. That's an issue. That's an issue with climate change. I mean, the storms are more intense. They're more frequent than ever before. So stormwater is also an issue that the town ought to look at. I mean, it was really amazing. I had a conversation with Audra today. I mean, we were kind of on the forefront way back when the town decided to spend money and buy the bog. Imagine if that got developed way back when, and it could have. But what the town decided was there's a need for it and a value. Really, I think it was a stormwater management need.
It's a catch basin.
It wasn't here then, but we really need to start looking at things, I think, like impervious surface on lots. Right now, we don't. We've talked about that, and I think that's part of the discussion.
I think that's huge. Yeah, I agree. Anita, I saw you trying to raise your hand a few times. Do you want to jump in?
Who, me? Raise my hand? Who would have thought?
I have my eye on you. Trust me.
Yeah, this is a massive project, and there's no doubt that it needs to be done. There's no question. I even question whether we need to look at education as a major piece. In other words, do we really need to talk people into the fact that it does need to be done? I question that. I think people understand that. But how to go about it is another thing, because I would tend to agree with Matt that there's so much that is included in this work. In my feeling that you know, we're doing pretty well to get it done by November. The materials from York and Booth Bay that were put in the packet were quite different in their approach, and in fact, the York one, it looked like the beginning of it was a presentation text or outline, and followed by what they wanted to add to the comprehensive plan. So I get that it's just background material, but what I would like to suggest to the board is that instead of bringing in a lot of speakers to tell us this is a problem, we need to address this problem, I think will be a waste of our time, because we know it's a problem and we will address it. I do agree with doing a chapter, just adding a chapter, and that's what the work needs to be done. What we need to decide is how we're going to go about that. Do we want a committee, or is there enough work available from planning board members to be the committee? That's a question. Another question is actually how to proceed with structuring the writing and the work. I agree that looking at what other towns have done is going to be hugely informative. But I would suggest that we start by developing a skeleton or structure. And that would start by asking questions. So perhaps what I see as a good starting point for the board would be think of questions that need to be addressed by this work, by the actual text of the comprehensive plan chapter. And then we take just a massive brain dump of questions. What about this? How's it going to pack that? And then create the outline that comes out of that. This is how we'll structure this chapter. First, we'll address this, then we'll address this. Once we have the questions, then we go to the experts and have them, and also the work that has been done elsewhere, start to inform and answer those questions. So I would say, instead of bringing in an overwhelming amount of material and information that is out there, we should instead think carefully about how we want to progress. And so if we could just get an outline, we want to address this. Like I jotted down a few ideas. Identify all information, departmental, research, scientific resources who provide expertise that we can draw from. And
I have
what we
a
want to consider.
suggestion, only because I worked on the comp plan committee when they were
Hey,
writing.
Jeannie,
Hi.
go ahead.
Look at the comp plan and look at the various chapters. And there are some you can eliminate as being that you're not going to need to address at all. And there are some that you will need to address. And then pick some of your special interest. Adopt a couple chapters. And as you go through things, look at that chapter and see what's going to happen. What do you need? What kind of information do you need for each of those chapters? It's just a way to get started.
No, I think that's great, Jeannie, and thank you for your input on that. And Anita, just to address yours, I tend to agree that we don't need education that sea level rise or climate change is an issue, but I do think we benefit from hearing what other groups propose as solutions. And that's what I was focusing on when I thought about bringing in other groups, is I don't need someone to come in and tell me how bad it is and that we're facing this catastrophe if we don't do anything. What I want to hear from these groups is what are their proposed solutions that might impact what we can do? How can we help them hit their solutions? And so, from an education standpoint, that's really more what I'm looking for, not a overview of how bad sea level rise is. Although I think, as a cursory thing, that's not a terrible thing for the entire board just to have a short presentation on. I certainly don't have a problem with that, but I agree. We don't need to spend hours and hours being lectured on how bad climate change and sea level rise is for us. What we really need is to hear from these groups that are looking at this issue and how their solutions will address the problem and how they overlap with ours. And so that's really what I'm looking for. I think Jeannie's just provided a great way to sort of look at the comp plan and provide that skeleton that you've raised, Anita, and to sort of start to address, primary issues that, there are some things that are more planning board issues and other things that are not. And, we should first stick to the things that are clearly within our purview. Obviously, the comp plan in general is something that's within our purview, but focusing on those things that really do sit with the heart and soul of what the planning board is about. And, just as a simple thing, like, for instance, as Matt and Jeremy and I have all alluded to with the Lyman Morse thing, they would have gladly raised the floor of their building by 2 feet if they could raise the height of their building by 2 feet. And maybe we should have forced them to go through a whole ordinance change and everything else. They chose not to, and the planning board eventually, approved their project. But that's something that we could address very quickly and readily in our code, and even and in the comp plan as well. So those sorts of things are available to us as fixes, and that as Jeremy has talked about, gets into the floodplain ordinances and things like that. We have a lot of stuff out there, but we do need to start to narrow our focus as much as possible while keeping as comprehensive approach as possible. And I know that sounds like a total contradiction, but that's the reality. Andy, did I see you try to jump in? Did you raise your hand?
Yeah. So firstly, I just wanted to say, I'd love to jump in and help wherever I can. I really liked what Anita said about, starting off with a vision of, what we want to accomplish in terms of a chapter and kind of a skeleton. And then, thinking about what we know and what we don't know, and, figuring out all the don't knows to fill in all the gaps. But the only question I would have about not bringing speakers in is there are known knowns and there are known unknowns, but the speakers might bring some of the unknown unknowns that we don't know that we need to include. So, I could see it's something that could quickly get out of control and, turn into a behemoth of a project if we don't, control what we want to accomplish in the short term. So, I would support at least having some speakers come in to for educational purposes, just to figure out what we don't know. But I'm happy.
Great, Andy. Thanks. Yeah, and I'm glad to hear that you're on board with that as well. And so, Jeremy, maybe that's something that, from Anita's point and seconded by Andy. Oh, Andy, did I cut you off?
Yeah, I just have one more thing to say.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
I am a Lyman Morse employee. I don't know if everybody knows that. But I don't feel obliged to recuse myself from this activity because I don't believe it's been okay. I just wanted to put that out there.
No, this first of all, this is just a preliminary discussion, and then when we get into these discussion groups, trust me, I'm going to expect the participation of our alternate members, and we all have issues and conflicts with things, but we're not doing anything that's from a level of voting or anything else right now at this point. So we just want you to be involved. And right. Your employer is not a concern of mine at this point. So Jeremy, what I was going to say was taking Anita and Andy's comments. We can sort of have a cursory look at what the issues we face, just to give us some stark reality. But we don't need a lot of that. What we really want to hear about is like if you're talking to Allison, she doesn't have to tell us that there's that climate change is a problem. She can focus more on what they've seen on the ground and what their solutions are. And that kind of thing. That would be helpful for the board, I think, rather than again letting us know how big of an issue things are, because I think it does seem like from everybody on the board's comments, we're all pretty much on board with climate change is an issue, sea level rise is an issue we need to address. You don't need to sell us on that. Let's get to the more like this is the boots on the ground, the nuts and bolts of it.
Sounds good.
I've had a comment, but I have another comment after her.
Oh, yeah, I just have a question. One of them is just to be sure I'm on the same track, that all of the issues are in the comprehensive plan. Is that correct? So we would use that as our first pass to find out all the areas that we need to be addressing?
Well, so the comp plan, if you read that, it's really, the summary of the town, and it's the guide for the town on how to plan its future. And so zoning ordinances need to be consistent with a comp plan. And so if we craft something, it has to be consistent with something. And that's the idea, is to really assess the problem, and then come up with recommendations. And so within the comp plan chapter, there will be recommendations, because every chapter has recommendations. And so we'll have recommendations that will be, come out of these discussions that will be in there. And then there will be sections like recommendations that encourage the town to address impervious surface coverage, encourage this, that, and the other. And then the planning board takes that, and we take that and we say, okay, perfect, let's do this now. And so then we would develop the zoning ordinance, which is supported by the comp plan. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right, and that's great, Jeremy. And Pat, that's a great question. Because we are really looking first at the comp plan, and then we're gonna have to go back and do the amendments to the particular ordinances that are in question.
I mean, we can kind of do them at the same time, potentially, Ethan, because what I think to voters would be neat would be a package of climate change.
Here's how we do it.
Warrant articles
Amend the comp plan to say this, and then here's the zoning ordinance changes we're asking
that
for.
supports it. Mm-hmm.
Climate change package. I mean, that would be great if we can get that all done. I mean, it is a monumental task, but it sounds like everybody on the board has committed their resources, everybody except for Matt.
Matt's bringing.
Who's got his eye on the broadband project? So fiber optics.
Yeah, awesome.
You can't throw your friends under the bus. Who can you throw under? That's right.
And back it up.
Exactly. Good stuff.
Ethan?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm a little confused as a result of our discussion. Jeannie suggested that we look at each chapter and think about what we want to add to that chapter that relates to climate change, or how that chapter might inform us.
Yeah, I think it's the latter. It's not add to that chapter.
Yeah.
It's how that chapter would inform our new chapter.
Okay. So
that I think allows you to build the skeleton that you're talking about.
Okay, so we're looking at a separate chapter, not a bunch of additions to the comp plan.
Right, and I think I think that's consistent with what Jeannie was saying. I think she was just pointing out that the comp plan does exist. It is already there, and it is something that needs addressed. And so if we look at the comp plan and read through that carefully, you can quickly eliminate certain portions of the comp plan that are not affected at all by sea level rise. Siting of cell towers or whatever it is. I don't know. I'm just throwing something out there, but so really just using that as to inform where we want to focus our energy.
I wanted to ask Jeannie, given her experience with working on the comp plan, and I too was involved in one of those chapters myself. Jeannie, do you think it's realistic for us to come up with something that we'll do what we're talking about by November?
I think you may have to prioritize the chapters that are going to have the most impact. And then there are others that you're going to need to get to. But I don't know that you can get the whole plan gone through and address all the components that need to be addressed in one package. I'm not sure. It's going to be a lot of work, and the thing is, the deadline is August.
Right.
For November.
Yeah, it's not November, it's August. But the other thing we have on our side is not reinventing the wheel. And if we can find other approaches that seem to address these issues and would work for us, then we can start from there and fine tune rather than just start from scratch. But I do agree with Jeannie's proposal, or idea that we look over the comp plan and see which areas we want to focus on. Go ahead, Jeremy.
And how your chapter and how the chapter will be laid out. Let's model it after the other chapters, right?
That's what I'm saying, right? Yeah.
And what I did send you from Boothbay Harbor in York, that was, when Lauren initially started working, doing some intern work for us, that's kind of her. She just put that together. It's really a bulleted list of things. And so what I would recommend and what I will do is I will send you links to the town of York's comp plan, because it's not just, I didn't pull out the section of the comp plan and just make a copy of it. That was Lauren going through how they did things, who they met with. You can see Pete Slavinsky's name. You can see other people that they brought in. We don't need that was just for informational purposes. So I think what
Right.
the real meat is what's in their comp plans now, because they've gone through that process. So I'll give you links to all of those comp plans.
Great.
Okay, sound good?
Great.
And
Yeah.
just
I
Sounds,
think,
And
sounds
please,
daunting.
please share information with me as I share things with you. You know, if you have thoughts, Anita, or you can come up, you have the time to go through the chapters that we have and figure out what you think a skeleton should be. Like, share that with us so we all can be bouncing this off of each other as we're going. I don't want to just have this conversation every 2 weeks.
yeah, I think that's great. And, you know, again, this is stuff that's not subject to, you know, particular rules or discovery. I mean, obviously discussions of the planning board, but this is not an official proceeding. It's a discussion group, informal discussion. We can certainly circulate ideas and articles or whatever else we see on you know, and want to share around. You know, it's appropriate to do that. When we start discussing actual changes, I think then we start to formalize the process a bit more.
So I'd like to know, I'm still thinking big picture and framework, because otherwise it's really daunting, because there's just so much material and there are so many ways to start this, so many ways to look at it. So I'd kind of like to know what the board thinks about the idea of creating a list of questions that one board member then takes and creates a framework out of. And I mean, Jeannie's suggestion of looking at the different chapters, those will raise the questions. Okay, we need to address this and we need to address that. Reading a comp plan from another town, we need to do this, we need to do that. But all that needs to be taken and made into an outline that we build off of. And we need someone to do that. Pat?
Oh. I can certainly aggregate data.
Pat, are you our data aggregator? Is that what
Yeah.
I'm hearing?
That'll be it.
That's a fantastic skill to have.
But that's a good point about sectioning off different questions to different members. So we're not all like going after the same area or repeating any work. Is that basically what you were getting at, Anita?
I think what I'm saying is, I mean, like I created a bunch of questions and not in any order. They may not even be relevant. We may not want to address them ultimately. But you know, if the aggregator gets receives questions and goes, okay, well, that would go over here, and this one would go over here, and that would go over there, and then you start to create this framework, and then maybe there is a comp plan framework that we like, maybe there isn't. I don't know.
And I'm not sure if there's ever been a subcommittee or a committee of the planning board or whatever, but you know, Pat, if you since you were the first one to chime in and say you were looking to jump in on this, if you would just sort of be willing to be our point person, as Anita's sort of suggesting, we're going to start circulating things around email or whatever, and Jeremy's going to bring in some speakers. If the planning board members have questions, go ahead and just copy them to everybody. And Pat, maybe you can start to just draw those out and like Anita suggests, maybe start to put together a skeleton. And,
Sure.
you know, that's really early in the process, but I agree with Anita that we do need a framework and we need to start to focus our efforts on certain areas. And,
Yeah.
and so I think that's a great way to start, because, you know, we could all think, we could come at this from 5 different angles. With 5 different, or we actually 7 different planning board members, and you know, so that, you know, that could be really complicated. But I'm with Jeremy on the not inventing the wheel, and I'm looking at what other towns have done and that sort of thing. But we are unique. We are our own entity, and you know, there's no telling that Camden couldn't be, you know, a trailblazer in this as opposed to just, you know, a follower. So maybe we could do something more than what other communities have done. We'll have to see. But I think we're all in on, you know, I like the enthusiasm of the board on this matter. And I think it's really important. And I can't think of anything really more important that the planning board could address in the, in the year 2021 than what we're looking at right here. And so if we could all get on board on that, and Pat, if you would just be willing to start to, maybe sort of trying to start to build a skeleton, as Anita would say. Again, this is very open-ended, but we're at the very beginning process. But if we can narrow our focus to a few areas, like Jeannie suggested, and make sure that we can accomplish something, and if the chapter can do a sweeping change and we can get everything into the comp plan and everything into the zoning ordinance that we want, that's fantastic. Let's do it by November, and that should be our goal. But we may not. We have to accept that too.
Yeah.
That sound good to everybody?
Sounds great.
Sure.
I have one last
right.
comment, Ethan.
Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, I think from an efficiency perspective, using something like Google Docs, where it's a shared document where everyone can collaborate simultaneously, we should think about doing that, and then we're not, sending multiple documents around and trying to piece them all together. So I don't know.
What is this? What is this Google of which you speak?
I don't know. Maybe Matt can bring us up to speed on how that works.
It's a public forum, so I will be hitting mute. There you go.
All right.
Sounds good.
Does that do it for everyone? I really appreciate everybody's involvement and consideration on this one. This is something that goes beyond the day-to-day, drudgery of going through, plans and applications and everything else. And it really is important. So, I think we have a good makeup here to take this on. And Jeremy, did you want to jump in?
I just wanted to say, I think that, there's 24 chapters that are in the comp plan, and I think 11 of them were not even probably relevant. There won't even be a section in our chapter about 11 of those chapters. So I think we got this.
Can you
already? You almost cut it in half. That's great.
Could you just send a quick email when you get a chance? What those? Because I was going through the comp plan, and I would love, just from your take on it, what 11 did not even look at. That would be.
I will do that. And Pat, I'll touch base with you. Pat, I'll help you, and we'll try to do this together, at least initially. So I think we're moving forward.
And Jeremy, any answer on the email addresses? Should we just form new email addresses using Gmail, or should we are we looking at a Camden email address?
I'm sorry, I did not ask that question yet. I will do that, and then I will do that in the next couple of days and get you an answer. I can do
because I don't think this is the most volatile subject matter, but it would be good if we're going to start having these sort of group email discussions. It's probably best for all of us that we separate them from our personal emails.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
That's fair. I will work on that in the next couple of days. If we can't do it, we'll just do a new Gmail or something.
Yeah.
Or how?
I would suggest that if you have a chance to look at the comp plan, and Jeremy sends around the chapters that he thinks are not going to be impacted, look at the goals and the what are they called? It's,
recommendations, no?
recommendations, and that's where you would add to these chapters, are those recommendations to look at impervious surface. Or so if you just look at those parts, I think you'll find that you got a huge start. You got a real good start at whittling down.
Great. Thanks, Jeannie. And you know that any discussions on this, your attendance is required.
She's muted herself already.
Yeah, I know. She's calling. She's like,
you went fishing, Ethan. You got nothing. You better cast again.
she knows what I'm talking about. She knows. Okay, I think that's about it then for tonight. We had a very productive meeting, and if we can run all our meetings this efficiently and get through our applications and stuff, we will have more time to dedicate to this project. So that's great. A lot of that is obviously due to the fact that we had the pre-application meetings and that sort of thing. So we were well aware of what the applications were going to involve. But thank you to Jeannie and thank you to Jeremy for the lending to the efficiency of this whole process and holding my hand as I work through learning to be the chair. Matt, you've got something?
Anita has her hand up.
Oh, sorry, Anita, I didn't see it. Go ahead.
Thanks, Matt. I wanted to mention, we've moved on from that topic, and I think we did a great job of, sort of sorting out how we're going to approach this. To me, it feels daunting and like a big project we're taking on, and I'm all for it. There are other big daunting projects that we need to take on. And what I'm wondering is how we're going to balance all of those things. And I wonder if we could, I would like to advocate for the planning board to be a proactive board rather than a reactive board. And I think this is the first step, taking this on and creating something. But there are other areas for this town that we need to be proactive in. And I'm hoping that taking on one doesn't mean we don't take on others.
Yeah, I think you're right. There are things that we had like, what was it, Jeremy? The franchise retail
Yeah.
that's still out there. We've got,
I think housing,
short-term rental things.
affordable housing.
I agree, Anita. Yeah.
Yep. What concerns me, what has concerned me is that the tannery discussion has taken, has directed itself significantly towards affordable housing, because that is a pressure that the town is feeling more now. And it's the select board is looking at a big housing addition on the tannery site because of that, feeling that pressure. And yet that's not something that has ever been discussed before for the tannery site and is not in any of the criteria. So I feel there is a pressure in the town for affordable housing, and I want to make sure that we are proceeding and that's in that direction as well, instead of taking these things one at a time, that somehow we're doing that. And I feel that the effort in the housing issue is going to be as multifaceted as the climate change sea rise issue.
Right, and I think we've taken some baby steps in the housing issue by loosening the restrictions on accessory apartments last year. Making it easier for people to do that. But you're right, affordable housing is a huge issue. There is a lot of pressure on the town for that. But it is also one of those areas where, just Jeremy's recent proposal to reduce some lot size restrictions was another effort to do that. But a lot of the affordable housing type stuff is stuff that's going to come before the board as developments for site plan review. But as far as taking a broader picture on that, if you have suggestions on that, which I fully support, I think that's a great idea to just throw it to Jeremy and Jeannie, ask to put it on the agenda, something you want to talk about or whatever, and let's get it out there, because you're right, we shouldn't be limiting ourselves to one thing, but we also can't just be scatterbrained about it. We got to get it on an agenda and get it moving forward. So
Right.
if you have ideas or anything, and I encourage all the board members, if there's something that you think the planning board, I agree with you 100%, to the extent that we can be proactive as opposed to reactive, we're doing ourselves and the town of Camden a favor, or a service. And so that's the important thing. And if we have those things, let's get them on the agenda and let's get them discussed.
So I think that a broad-ranging discussion for how to proceed, like we did today, is what we need to do in housing.
Okay.
It's not like I have a specific thing. There are going to be a number of things, just like with sea rise. It's all over the place.
Sure. What I can do is I can maybe we can shoot for one of the upcoming meetings, Anita, and I can gather some information on what other planners and development folks around the country are doing to try to address this issue, and
Right.
Yeah, and because Jeremy doesn't have anything on his plate, but that's the whole point too.
Right.
Because if there are things that you see, you read an article that says X town in New Hampshire is doing this or whatever, that you think, hey, that's an idea, maybe we should talk about it. That's part of what we need here is ideas and new ideas, because we can't just out of thin air create new housing projects. or proposals,
So-
other than the one that's proposed for the tannery site, which, you may be for or against it. It doesn't matter insofar as, is it an appropriate use of the land space that we have? And, so any ideas that anybody has, let's get them out there. But if you want to put that on, like Jeremy said, he can start to look at what other people are doing. I know other towns are struggling really hard with affordable housing. I know Rockland and Belfast, for two, of our nearest neighbors, are really, up against it as well. And they are looking at it.
Jeremy, could you plan that kind of broad-ranging discussion for the board meeting that follows the March 30th webinar? And can you send out an invitation to all the board members and alternates to attend that webinar? Then we're at least going into our first broad-ranging discussion about it after, learning a lot from the webinar.
Yeah, so that's March 30th. It would probably be April 15th, Anita, that we would do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anita, do you have the link to that webinar that you can? Because
Jeremy's going to go ahead and send that out.
Jeremy said he sent it out.
Jeremy, you have it? Okay.
Will you,
So
Jeremy?
you should have it soon.
I'm
And
one of
you
the
need-
panelists, so.
And you need to register. So once you get it, you register.
No Zoom bombing, Matt Siegel.
Not me.
They don't
All right.
call him the Zoom bomber for nothing. Okay, hey, that's great. Thank you everybody for your enthusiasm and your participation. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up unless Jeremy, you have something else you wanted to add.
Nope.
Okay. I think it's been a very productive discussion, and I want everybody to feel that their voices are heard, and know that your opinions are valued. And I think as a group we can move forward and really make this a collaborative discussion and work towards things that will improve life in the town of Camden for years to come. And I'm looking forward to that discussion. So thank you everybody for your time. I can't remember, Jeannie, if I'm required to have a motion to close the meeting or if I can just go ahead and do that with executive authority.
How about a motion to adjourn? I would like to make, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. And I will go around and take, I guess I have to do roll call again. So Matt Siegel,
Oh, aye, it's time for dinner.
Andy,
Aye.
Pat,
Aye.
Anita,
Hi.
and I also am an aye. All right, everybody, thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Jeannie, for all your support.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy.
Everybody, we'll see you in a couple Thursdays.
Thanks.
Cheers.
a
Thank
lot.
you.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thanks.